Welcome.
So it is said that he took seemingly ordinary events from rural life and elevated these in his poems to themes of universal significance. He was a poet who could take a simple event and who could take a simple event or a simple character and an ordinary event and elevate it to the level of universal significance, exploring the deeper philosophical issues it brings about life. And it is said that he had mastered the rhythms of actual speech. If you read about his criticisms about his poems by other contemporary poets or by other critics, they have commented on his ability and his mastery over the rhythms of actual speech. Most of them are in iambic meter, iambic pentameter, or iambic tetrameter. Sometimes he is called a traditionalist, right? Because he was not in touch with the modern trends of writing in free verse. As I told you earlier, he did not experiment with new styles of writing, but in that sense, he was a traditionalist, but he was, most of the time his themes looked at the dilemma of modern people. Okay, so with this background information in mind, we'll look at some of his poems. Where do we begin with? The first poem is Mending Wall. So, Mending Wall. Again, a small, a narrow, usual event that is taking place in this village, maybe, right? Something there is that doesn't love a wall. There is something that doesn't like a wall. What is this wall about? That sends the frozen ground swell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun. So there is something in nature that doesn't love this barrier, the wall that is separating human beings. What could this separating barrier mean? We'll look at it, right? Figuratively, this is about the wall that is separating the two gardens between him and his neighbor. Right? So simple episode. There is a wall which is separating his garden from the neighbor's garden. But Frost says that there is something in nature that doesn't like this wall. So why is the wall crumbling when the ground is frozen? Because the ground is frozen, there are cracks appear in the wall, and finally some of it crumbles down. So there is something that doesn't love a wall that sends the frozen ground swell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun. The upper boulders, the upper parts of in the sun, because of the temperature difference, maybe they fall out and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. So that this theme is significant. That two people can pass abreast in the through the wall. Who could it be? Maybe the poet and his neighbor. Maybe two people can easily walk abreast through these gaps. So there is a possibility of him and his neighbor passing through the wall, right? Passing through the gap in the wall. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair, where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. So there is the work of hunters, right? When there is a small gap in the wall, just to please the dogs, the hunters come and dig for the rabbit, and they will somehow dig the rabbit out of the holes in the maybe at the foundation of the wall to take out the rabbit. So, but the hunters are doing this to please the dogs, right? But these two neighbors cannot agree on not to build the wall. So what is the speaker's proposition? Walls should not be built, right? There is something that doesn't love a wall. The gaps that no one has seen them made or heard them made. So these gaps are not being made, right? These gaps.
Madam, you have muted. Excuse me, madam, you have muted.
Okay? Right. So why does the writer say that there are, can you hear, right? Can you hear now?
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam.
Okay, right. Why does this writer say that these gaps, no one has heard them made or seen them made? These gaps, as well as the wall, they are made in human nature itself, right? So the human beings are responsible for making the gaps. What are the gaps really? This is the breaking the wall, the rule breaking, right? The law breaking things. So why are the laws, the mending wall is symbolical of the rules, the ground. Just a minute. They are made secretly in the hearts and minds of people, right? The walls symbolizing the rules itself, they are made in the minds and hearts of the people. They are the rules and the laws, the rules and regulations, similar to Blake's mind-forged manacles.
Mending Wall is a metaphor, you know.
Yes, it's a metaphor. It is symbolical of the barriers that separate human beings. So the barriers can be anything. They can be either the rules and regulations, the laws, right, or the institutions, or the barriers, that means the ideological differences that separate human beings. Not maybe so much the rules or the laws, but maybe the differences that we have, like say our race, our skin color, or our religion, that separates human beings. Anything that separates human beings in the modern world can be taken as the mending wall. So no one has seen or heard. They are made in the minds and hearts of people, but they are there, right? So but at spring mending time we find them there, right? So the gap is what has naturally happened. So in human nature or nature itself, mother nature does not allow these gaps at the wall. So there are gaps in the wall, meaning that whatever it is, somehow these laws, these rules, these barriers are somewhere broken. That is when all the problems seem to erupt. But what happens at spring mending time, we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go to each the boulders that have fallen to each, right? So he gets the neighbor down and they walk the line, right? When the laws are broken, we sit at the table, we convene another meeting and then set the problems right. We set the book rules, we set the guidelines, right? We set the mending wall, the barrier again. We are not trying to break the barrier, we are not trying to break down the wall, but we are mending it again, right? So this is literally we can say it that maybe Frost is talking about the actual wall that separates the two gardens between the neighbors. So he doesn't like it, right? Actually, the wall, it is in itself there is a theme, the wall that separates the two gardens. Earlier, previously in old times, these walls were not there. People could freely move into the neighbor's garden, neighbor's house. But in modern times, these fences are there. So, what is it that separates these neighbors? Why is a wall necessary? Why is a fence necessary? Is it necessary at all? Can't we live upon a mutual understanding? But the neighbor doesn't like it. So maybe he is criticizing that thing itself. Maybe he is criticizing the building of the wall. But at a more general level, more universal level, he might be talking about as I told earlier, the barriers that separate human beings as individuals, that separates people according to their race, ethnicity, according to laws, according to countries, the rules that separate them. So we walk the line again. Now get the neighbor down again. Look at what the countries are doing. They draw the border lines, right? So they get together and they do not unite, but they draw the border line again. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and we meet to walk the line. So where does it finish? Where is the line exactly? And set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go to each the boulders that have fallen to each. So this is to be fair. The boulders which have fallen to each side, they are taken. The neighbor is each person is responsible for the boulders which have fallen onto his side. So we have to use a spell to keep them in their place, right? And some are loaves and some so nearly balls. We have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. So the size of the this broken wall, the size of the boulders are so huge that some are loaves, and we have to use a spell to make them balance. That means it's so difficult to build the wall because it's against human nature and it's against the natural environment. So what does he say? Stay where you are until our backs are turned. Right? That means the poet knows, the speaker knows that once the backs are turned, when the two people are not watching, this mischief will happen once again, right? Always there will be an effort to break down the wall. Always there will be efforts to reunite. The effort, human nature is to get back together, to reunite, right? It's for love and for mutual understanding. But the walls are artificial, so that is why the writer says, stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them, or just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. Right, so we wear our fingers rough with handling them, the difficulty of building the wall again. We are injuring our human nature, right? The necessity for bonding, we are injuring that. It's perhaps just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. So each one on each side. It's a game. There are several poems that come to mind, right? When we talk about Yasmin, this thing, the Yasmin Gunaratna's Big Match. where each person is on one side. The players are on two sides. So they are playing a game, a match, divided, right? Divided into teams. So it's a division. Each one on a side. It comes to little more. Now it's something more than that. There where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all fine, and I am apple orchard, right? So there is something more to this. Mine is an apple orchard. He is all fine. My apple trees will never get across to and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says good fences make good neighbors. Right? So the absurdity of building the wall. Mine is an apple orchard, and there is no reason why we should build the wall because it's very clear. Um, my apple trees will not go and eat the pine cones. There is nothing to take from the pine garden, right? Because like there's no way the pine cones, no one is going to steal them. But that is the irrationality of building the wall. Why go there, right? So of course maybe the speaker is highlighting the irrationality, the stupidity of building the wall, right? Sometimes people blindly follow rules, right? The saying, the neighbor's justification for mending the wall is that good fences make good neighbors. So this is something that has been handed down by his grandfather or father maybe. Spring is
Is it talking about the respectful distance between the neighbors can bring a harmonious relationship between them? No?
yes,
He's talking about the actual fence
yes,
that we all.
yes, the actual thing, yes. The distance, the respectful distance maintained between two neighbors can bring harmony. Now, if you have seen in shops, also sometimes they say money will not be given on lent, right? So that is true in a sense. When there is distance, there is better harmony. But is that it now? His good fences make good neighbors. What does that mean literally? That means that the neighbors or the human beings are not able to maintain close bonds. That is harmony is better when there is distance. So isn't that ironical itself? That when there is distance, there is better harmony.
Yeah, but as I think that he's talking about the fence, the actual fence that make respect between them, no? Two neighbors.
Yes, that is correct. Right? So what he's actually saying is this: good fences may good neighbors. The actual thing that we are, the tradition that we are accustomed to is that when there is a clear division, when there is distance, it makes good neighbors.
It
Right?
is true, no?
It is true. That is because it is true because why is it true? Because our people don't know the limit. We don't know how to respect. We don't know how to love. That is the reason why when there is distance, there is better harmony. If people knew how to, now if people actually really loved each other, and if there was better mutual understanding, if they really actually really love the way Christ preached, or the way Allah preached, or the way Buddha preached, then there would not be the necessity of a fence. If we were all human beings capable of the love that they preached, if that was true, then we would not need a fence. But the reason why a fence is necessary is that we do not know how to love. So that is why we need to keep a distance. Now, isn't that true? Now, look at this situation. Yes,
Yeah.
Aspa?
Yeah, and there's another, the line 12 also saying the same things. No, I let my neighbors know beyond the.
Yes.
The line 12, it brings the same idea that the cooperation and the harmony between neighbors.
Yes, he says that. It is right. Uh, he
Line
said,
12, I let my neighbor know.
yes, I let my neighbor know. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows, right? I see him. Where is that line? We'll go through it line by line, right? So he only says, good fences, make good neighbors. Right? So if we look at the situation in countries, now there are better rules. Look at our country, there are better rules. When there are no rules, people misbehave. So it's in the strength of the rules, it's in the strength of the courts, the jurisdiction, or the how the law is operated. So if the law is operating well, the discipline of the country is good. So that is how we think. But if people actually really love, then there's no need for a law, there is no need for a legislation, there's no need of a constitution. But we are used to rules and laws and constitutions. We are used to being fair. The idea of being fair. If it is this for me, why not for the other person? So that is a...
It is because that human.
Yes, it is because human.
It is because that the human being has positive and negative qualities. Suppose
Yes.
if he has only positive qualities, that means we don't need any laws. Does not want to get operate. No.
Yes, that is it. If human beings are perfect, then there would be not be a necessity of a law. But the idea is that this nature doesn't love this, right? The ultimate goal, is the ultimate goal of humanity to make a very good constitution, to make a good law. It is not. The ultimate goal of humanity is to learn how to love and to be perfect in that way. To learn how to love and be perfect in love. It is not to make a good constitution, not to be ruled very well by law, right? Because the law is not sufficient. If you look at Christianity, that is what Jesus said. The law is not sufficient for you. You will always break it. The commandments will always be broken, but there is something that fulfills this commandment, which is love, right? So that is an aside. But what Robert Frost is telling here is this idea that good fences make good neighbors. And I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Why is it that good friends make good neighbors? It is ironic, right? It is difficult for us to understand because we are used to this statement. We think that good rules, good walls, good fences make good neighbors. We are used to it. But it is not actually the truth. The truth is good. It is not good fences, but it is mutual understanding, respect, and love that make good neighbors. If there is a wall, if you say that a good wall or a good fence is necessary for us to be good neighbors, that means they are not good neighbors at all, right? So that is the irony of it, the idea of the neighbor. Who is your neighbor? That if you love, only if you can call him your neighbor. If there is the necessity of a wall to make you a good neighbors, that means there is no good neighborhood there, right? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. So why isn't fences necessary for cows? We are not animals. We are not savage beasts. We are civilized human beings. We are capable of love. We are capable of understanding. We are capable of thinking and feeling for the human beings. So how could then fences be make good neighbors? Isn't it for cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was likely to give offense. Right? Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. So there is something in the nature that wants this wall down. So that is why the poet emphasizes that the nature does not allow this wall. The goal is to live without the wall. The goal of humanity is to try to live without the separation. So that is why nature pulls down this wall. And he is asking this question, what and to whom I was like to give offense. Of course, as perhaps maybe as Aspar said, he is sorry. Right? As Aspar said, maybe he says the poet is a good person, right? So he thinks that I'm not going to give anyone offense, but the neighbor is suspicious, right? Because Robert Frost might know about himself. He might say that I'm not going to give offense. But later on, the people who come after Robert Frost, the people who will come there later on might give offense, right? So it's good, as you said, to keep the rule, to always go by the rule. We always tell our students or anyone else, always go by the rules, so you will be safe, right? So that is what keeps the safety. Now there are two sides to the coin here. One is that the poet says that I am not likely to give anyone offense. That is one thing, but that is what from his point of view. So poets, these people, poets are naturally sensitive beings. So they are not likely to give offense to anyone, but that doesn't mean that all the human beings are capable of this much of consideration, this much of respect, right? Other people now. Look at some of the evil things, the cruel things that people do, right? So there's always two sides to what a poet can say, even when.
And then the wall has two sides also, no, ma'am. It can separate the neighbors. Also, it can create a bond between them, no?
Could be, but here
that is why he's saying that the wall can make a good fence, make good neighbors. Mean that can create a bond between them. Also, that wall can separate them. It is up to human nature, no?
yes,
It is upon the human decision. Then if he tries to make a walls to separate them, it is there, no?
yes, but here what he's trying to say is that there is something in nature that wants the wall down, right? So he is against the wall. What he doesn't like is the wall, because the wall, here you can see the theme of industrialization coming in. It was during the industrial era that lands are separated and marked off, demarcated. It was at this time that people became individualized, individual family units, not extended family units. So all this took place during the in the period of industrialization. Even in a rural village, you could see the vestiges of industrialization there. So there, what I was walling in and walling out, what am I trying to keep in and what am I trying to keep out? There is nothing as such, right? Because the nature is common to everyone. There is nothing so much that I am trying to protect from him, and there is nothing so much that I am trying to I don't want from him, because it's common humanity, common nature, the oneness of human beings. This is the thing, right? So there is, I'm not walling anything in or walling out. There is no division here in humanity or in nature. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say else to him, but it's not else exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I would rather make him realize it himself. I wish that the neighbor will realize it himself. I see him there bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed, like an armed person who is carrying a stone. A savage, right? So this idea of the savage, not the wall. I mean, not civilized, right? So as I said earlier, when you measure the civilization of a society not by its constitution, not by its rules and regulations, but by how civilized people are, not by the strength of their rules and regulations, but how they respect each other, in how much they are educated, in how much they love each other. So that is how you measure a civilized nation. There are some countries where we say these people are good. If you say a society, if you see a society which has a lot of rigid rules and regulations, will you say this country is a good country? No. But if you say a country where the people are behaving themselves even without rules and laws, they are going along the roads nicely without uh, a traffic constable, without any color lights, but still very disciplined. So then you would say this country is a nice country. The people are good. So measurement of this goodness of the civilization is not in the walls, not in the divisions, not in the uh, separation, but in the unity, in how much love and mutual respect that they have for each other. So he is like a savage, because the reason why the poet indirectly calls him a savage, because he wants the wall. He is the one who wants the wall. The speaker doesn't want the wall. The person needs the wall to keep him disciplined, right? He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. He is in a dark era. His mind is not enlightened. He cannot see beyond the irrationality of the wall. He cannot see beyond the irrationality of this saying that good fences make good neighbors. That is ironical, right? So this comment is used by the poet as a ironical comment. Um, so the movement, the irony is that this key sentence, good fences make good neighbors, it is used in an ironical sense. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors, right? So he cannot change. Of course, in the past we needed rules and regulations. So maybe that is why the father said, maybe that is why the father said, the good fences make good neighbors. But now society, we are developing, right? We develop as human beings. We improve our human qualities, not the size of the fence or the wall, but we develop in our human qualities. So we need to move out of that barrier and forge better bonds, better understanding with each other. So this is where the neighbor has to change, but he is not changed. He is not enlightened. Therefore, he moves in the dark. Right, so that is again here. Robert Frost indirectly, it's a very subtle criticism, but he indirectly and subtly criticizes the man-made laws, the man-made rules and regulations which separate human beings from each other. It is not so much the work of institutions and rules and laws and regulations, but the work of human beings itself. Humans want separation, they want division. There is, but nature does not want this, right? The role of nature is to unite people. So he criticized the idea that good fences make good neighbors, but it is not good fences, but love for one another and trust that make good neighbors. So he says that now when the neighbor says he likes having thought of it so well, he takes pride in the fact that he has thought well of it. So he has taken this to heart. People are proud of their divisions, isn't that so? Some people are very proud of their ancestry and their race, so they do not want to mix with other races, or they don't want to mix with other people. We are from this caste, or we are from this religion, we don't mix. This is our ancestry, so they are very proud of it. So what is there to be proud in it? It is a quality of savage beasts. So the first subtly criticizes this. It is the necessity of primitive societies that build these kinds of divisions. These divisions are not to be found in civilized societies, but in primitive societies. So that seems to be first idea behind writing this poem, the mending wall. The wall is always been mended, even though every year there is a chance to bring it down. When the upper boulder spill, the poet calls for the speaker and the neighbor get together and they walk the line and they build up the wall again. So this is the tragedy of human beings, that they always want to be separated. They always want to be divided and cloistered in their own shells. They don't want to unite. They don't want to come out of their shell, right? Walling in and walling out. Are these things successful? Have you heard of the Great Wall of China, where they wanted every barrier that tries to keep its own people inside and other people out? They fail, right? People need to reach out to others. Human beings are never meant to stay within themselves. They are not meant to keep into themselves and say this is my thing and this is how I am going to be cloistered. Why is that? That necessity, the fear. Just like the neighbor, when primitive societies, when they moved in tribes, they moved in a tribe and they did not want to make friends with another tribe because they were afraid. They thought that other tribes might kill them. Why would other tribes kill them? Because they were afraid that this tribal society will kill them, right? So they get to. So that is a kind of a fear. That is the fearful mentality that is ruling in tribal people societies. In African countries, when colonizers colonized some parts in Africa, it was easier for European colonizers to colonize the African tribes. You must have heard about this because African tribes were very isolated. They were even within their own country. They were not united. They were afraid. Some tribes, right? They were afraid to make friends with other tribes. There were wars between the tribes themselves. Why is that? Because the tribes were afraid. So when the European colonizers came, the colonizers were outgoing. No, they talked and they tried to convert them to their religion. They went out to the tribes. But the tribal people made friends easier with the colonizers rather than with the other tribesmen. So that was made it easier for the enemy to come and colonize them. So this insecurity, this sense of fear makes it easy for the enemy to divide people and then conquer them. It is a quality of not of civilized societies, right? So this needs to be changed. People need to reach out. That is the rule or the ultimate goal of all things, right? To make peace, not to wage war. Why war? Because we are afraid. We want to keep things to ourselves. We want to draw the national boundaries. According to our ethnicity, according to our race, we separate the country and draw the borderline. So this is what happens. But that is a result of being insecure and a fear, right? The psychology of fear, which makes us to keep things to ourselves, keep people in, keep our own people and keep other people out. That is a result of psychological fear. So that should not be the case. Our aim should be to unite and reach out to other people. Right. So what could be the themes of this poem? The first is, of course, Robert Frost's criticism the division.
Nature can destroy the man-made things. Like
that is also there. Yes, correct. So one thing is the poet's criticism of walls, the criticism of division, any kind of separation, right? That is among human beings. And second one is the attack on industrialization and urbanization, right? It is with industrialization that there were fences and walls. It is not indirectly an attack against industrialization, right? It is an attack against changing society. How a society is changing, that individualism, right? People want to what you call, how do you say that? They want to be cloistered within their own gardens, right? You know the notion of individualism, the island mentality, right? Where you want every other people out for the sake of your privacy, right? So that is being criticized. And as Aspar said, the nature's ability to destroy what is man-made. There is always in Robert Frost's poems the conflict between nature and humans, right? It is as if nature is hostile against human beings. That is a theme that runs in his poems. It is not a very direct theme, not an explicit theme, but indirectly that how nature opposes human beings. Maybe for good or for bad, but he portrays, Frost does not portray nature as a very benign thing. No, whereas Coleridge and Wordsworth, they saw as nature as something healing, something as beneficial. Robert Frost does not see nature as that much beneficial or that much a blessing to human beings. He saw it something as hostile. Maybe because human beings are not um, good, but that is a different thing, right? But nature versus man is always a common theme in Frost's poems.
Ma'am, what about the role of boundaries in human society?
Yes, the boundaries in human society, right? So he is criticizing, Robert Frost criticizes the boundaries in human society. Not so much the literal wall. The wall is there, true, right? The wall that separates the two gardens, but also uh, taken symbolically, the boundaries in human society. The division, the separation. So how are people divided and separated? By the boundaries. There are boundaries which separate and divide human beings. So what are these boundaries? It could be our own laws and conventions. It could be our ideas of nationalism, our ideas of race and religion, or ethnicity, our caste, anything that divides us. Right? Doesn't always have to be those things. Can also be our gender. Anything that may restricts us, that limits us from loving each other, from mutually respecting another person or understanding. Now, this would not have happened. Imagine a situation where the two neighbors have perfect understanding between them. There are situations like that, isn't it? The neighbors live in peace and harmony within one compound, no barrier, right? So that is a situation where the neighbors will have perfect mutual understanding, perfect trust, perfect harmony. So that would be the ideal situation. But our people are not like that. They want the barrier to be there. And nowadays in modern society in Sri Lanka, we have the fences. We put it very high. The wall, the size of the wall or the height of the wall is symbolic of the economic strength of that family. So even if you don't have a good income, you would like to have a high wall around the compound and a good vehicle, and within that space you would do a lot of things. There's a huge competition, right, between families, isn't it? I don't know. Are you all in families? Oh,
Yes.
yes. Aspar is in families. Are you competing with the family who is next door to you?
No, I am living with my neighbors, but there are fences. That is a good fence, I think. And that is that fence actually make harmony.
So there is only a small, humble fence. What about the others? What is there around the compound wall? Is it a fence or a high wall?
Now, these days, madam, we can't associate the neighbors.
Due to Corona.
That is a good reason. So you see how it is, right? Even now, here
I think you have no fence.
of course there isn't any fence or any wall. There is a low fence, and there were three peacocks in the garden this just before the lecture started, and I thought they will start screaming. But fortunately, there were some vehicles going on the road, and they flew off into the next door garden. There isn't, so in a way, the wall is good. If there was a wall, we could have better peace and harmony, less noise, isn't it?
Yes.
But of course, there is not a fence. There isn't a wall. So it's very open, and as a result, everything can be seen, and there is a lot of noise as well. it is not good to associate with neighbors. Now, nature, in Robert Frost's time, nature was against this division. Now, of course, the nature is in support of the division. They want the people to be separate. Maybe
as
nature. Yes.
as the technology has dominated our society, I mean our life, we cannot be without any proper fence, no, because if we do not have a barrier among us, I mean around us, it will be very difficult to live in a peaceful,
Yes. Well, this is necessity. Necessity. Yes. It cannot be taken. Of course, the ideal situation is always nice, right? So this is where our conflict with poetry comes, which is good for an ideal world, but
Yeah.
it cannot be applied in reality sometimes. If it would be very dangerous if literary people, if artists and writers and poets become the
And
governors of the
here
country.
and he is talking about the rural area, no, that village area.
Yes, he is taking
So
inspiration from
cannot
India.
apply all those things in the modern, the city.
Yes, in the
So
city, in context it cannot be applied. Yes, that is also good point. Anything else? Now, when you talk about the practicality of these things, I was just reminded of another incident when we talked about John Donne's poetry. Even William Blake, right? When they are talking about freedom and kind of, you see, all these poets seem to be promoting the ideal of freedom. Two things are there, right? Why is freedom restricted in rules and regulations? Rules or regulations are there not so much to restrict two things, right? Now this is a wide argument, right? Don't try to include it in your answers. But the reason why certain rules and regulations are there is also to protect the rights of minority people and weak people. For example, it could be very a different poem if a female writer talked about it. Now, when you talk about, look at John Donne or William Blake, when they were talking especially about freedom, right? Sexual freedom or any type of freedom for that matter, we have to look at it from the point of view of other people. Now, what would happen if people were given that much of freedom? When they criticize the church for restricting freedom, you know, the Catholic Church has always stood up for the rights of women. It is a institution that from ancient times it safeguarded the rights of women, because women at this particular time, they did not have a voice, they did not have the right to speak, right? So when poets like this, from a male point of view, from a man's point of view, when they say that people should be given more freedom, we do not know whether other segments in society would say the same thing. Will they say we need more freedom? Perhaps they might say we need more laws, isn't it? Women always say that we need more laws to safeguard the vulnerable sect of the society. Right? So that is why sometimes rules or regulations are not so bad. Right? We must not always agree with these poets.
and also, if there is no institution that can control the society, the powerful people will dominate the powerless. No, then the weaker
Yes,
people will
become
be
obsessed.
the victims by the powerful people.
That is the reason, yeah. The rules and regulations are put up there to protect the weaker people. Otherwise, some segments of the society will dominate. It is always the power is abused. Isn't power aspect of human society? It is, right? Human nature has the desire to dominate, to overpower, right? To exploit. That is also not just to love, right? Even in nature it is there. Just give me one. Yes. It is there in nature itself. If you observe the natural environment, some animals, some creatures dominate the others. So even in human nature, the desire for dominance is there. The desire for power to control, that desire is there. So it is for that reason we need human man-made laws and regulations, rules and regulations. Without them, society will become very chaotic. It will become a terrible place, not able to live. Right? So that is something that is beyond this poem. It would be a critical reading of the poem. Although poets, you have to think they are very sensitive human beings, right? But not everyone has the ability to become sensitive to others just as much as poets are. So that is also another thing. Right, so if you sum up the themes, what would they be? Man versus nature, and first criticism about barriers that's in the human society, and first criticism of the division or lack of unity, lack of mutual trust in modern society. Also, how human beings are isolating themselves. Those can be taken as the themes of the poem. And what about the literary devices? The wall is symbolic of walls in the human society, barriers put up to separate human beings. So the wall is symbolic. The conversational tone is there, right? Frost quotes the lines, good fences make good neighbors, quotes the neighbor to make it more sound more realistic. Right, and then irony is there. Good fences make good neighbors. There's a lot of visual and auditory images there. The yelping dogs, right? The voice of the neighbor, and then the image of this neighbor like a stone savage, like the simile there. And the darkness is symbolic of the darkness of his mind, not only of his mind but also of the entire human society. Okay, right, then we'll move on to the next poem, Stopping by Woods. Just give me 1 minute here. Right, stopping by woods on a snowy evening. So here again, Frost is examining the conflict between the desire to be with nature, the desire to enjoy human nature, and his roles and responsibilities as an adult. There is the desire or the necessity to spend time in reflection, to relax, but at the same time, at the back of his mind, he hears this necessity, this calling, right? There's miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep, and the promises to keep. Is the necessity to fulfill certain obligations. It is the incident is that the poet or the speaker is on his way, perhaps home, maybe from work, and he stops by the snowy woods. And then he stops for a moment to admire the beauty of nature, but he is reminded that he has to go a long distance. he has a long way to go before he comes home, and there are a lot of things for him to do. Promises to keep. There are promises to keep. There's stuff to do for him. So he cannot really stop by the goods and admire nature. Right? There is a calling to go and fulfill, do work. Right? There's work to do. So that is the simple incident. So now it is this incident that first raises to the level of a philosophical nature. Even in human nature, we are always um, tempted by the desire to reflect on the beauty of nature, to be with nature, to enjoy nature, and always also to reflect, right? But that there is a tension between that and our the necessity to fulfill obligations in life. So the busy day, busyness of modern life, and the desire for relaxation, to spend the day idly, right? The tension between these two extremes, the tension between these two poles is the theme of this poem, Stopping by Woods. Stopping, whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. So even in the very first verse, Frost, the speaker admits that he is reluctant to stop and look at the woods because it belongs to someone else, right? So as in the previous poem, you cannot freely stop in front of anyone's gate or in front of someone else's woods because they belong to someone else and admire it, right? It might arouse suspicion, right? They are not freely available. This is a subtle, again a subtle criticism of what? Maybe of urbanization or maybe of the division of drawing of borders, right? So the lack of freedom, which is like human beings being bound by rules and regulations. That restriction of freedom is also is there in the undertones of the poem, right? I think, but his house is in the village, so there is no, he might not see me, because the poet secretly feels a little afraid or even a little guilty of stopping in front of the woods that belong to someone else. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. So it is as if the speaker is secretly doing this. My little horse must think it clear to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. Right. So the animal also seems to know the schedule of the owner. Right now, he has the farmhouse knows that the owner will stop only when there is a farmhouse. Right. So these animals, the bees seem to internalize the routines, the schedules, the intentions of their master. That busyness of the day is communicated to all the environment, to the families, to the animals. It is there communicated, right? So he gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. So always the only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and down the face. So is there a mistake in stopping here? So easy to mistake to stop and admire nature. It has always almost become a mistake. Admiring nature or not having a wall or not just simply idling, reflecting, that is almost considered a mistake. It's considered a sin according to the romantic words. Uh, because of industrialization, people were urged to make money. They were encouraged to be occupied, to be doing fruitful work, not idling, right? So not taking the time to play in the natural environment. Sometimes we encourage our children to be with their books. Keep employers encourage their workers to work. They don't encourage them to go and enjoy nature, right? So what is the promotion? The promotion is to work more, to be busy, to be occupied in things which we call productive. What is called productive is to earn money, right? So that is the urbanization, the capitalization. So it is such an unaccustomed thing to do, so unusual that people and animals think that there must be something wrong in stopping to admire the woods. There's something wrong in stopping and admiring nature. Stopping means literally stopping by the road during the journey, stopping to admire nature. But also figuratively, mm, that means stopping in life, just taking a break in life to be with nature. So that is considered a mistake, right? Something not normal. So see, in each stanza there is this tension of admiring nature, of enjoying nature, and the busyness of an ordinary life in the life of the ordinary day of a ordinary life of a person. See, my little horse must think it here to stop without a farmhouse near. So the farmhouse, the horse, right? And then the woods and the frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. So that's the on the one hand we have the farmhouse. On the other hand, the darkest evening of the year, the wood. Right? So the poet is caught up between these two. And even in the next line, harness bells, right, on one hand, and the sound of the sweep of easy wind and downy take. The harness bells, the bells that harness this animal, right? The harness is there to take him in the proper direction, right? So the harness bells on one hand, and the beautiful sound of the easy wind and the snowflakes falling on the other side, right? So the tension between these two extremes is brought out in each stanza. And then in the last stanza the poet says, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So the repetition, there is miles to go before I sleep. There are a lot of duties, obligations for me to meet. There are a lot of responsibilities and commitments. Poem appropriately captures the dilemma on the one hand of the poet and of the modern human being, right? The modern human being caught up between two things, the desire to enjoy and the busyness of a modern life filled with responsibilities and commitments. So loudly dark and deep, full of meaning. Right? What does it mean? The beauty of the natural environment, dark and deep meaning, full of meaning. Right? It has some mysterious force in it. It conveys something to the poet, just as much as the romantic idea of nature. It's true that the woods are lovely and dark and deep, right? There's a lot of mysticism in this nature. But that doesn't mean that so that word but I cannot enjoy it. It's true that the nature has a lot in it, but I cannot enjoy it because I have promises to keep, and there's miles to go before I sleep, right? No time to stop. So what could be this? The miles to go, right? Even in life, we are filled with maybe our goals, our ambitions, our deadlines, isn't it? We have so many, not only just family and household responsibilities and commitments, but other responsibilities
Duty
which
and
are
responsibility, yes.
yes,
Yeah.
other responsibilities which are brought out by the modern society. The necessity of doing a degree, for example, something that is brought on by modern institutions, the educational institutions, right? in a way, these are good. These are all
Then
yes.
the last two repetition before I sleep, it is an iron, before we can take it as before I die.
Yes, before I die, right? The things you have to do before you die.
Yes, I have a lot of duty and responsibility to do before I die.
Yes, that is the thing. I have a lot of duties and responsibilities to do before I die. So again, it is the tension between commitments, responsibilities, and duties in life, and the desire to enjoy, to relax, and to admire the beauty of nature. That is the conflict is the main theme of the poem. And at the same time, there's the idea, right? This commitment. This is all about modernism, right? The lot of commitments do before you die that comes with modern human beings in agricultural societies or even in earlier societies. This was not the case, right? Our deadlines, our what you call the red line that we have to cross, right? We are always in a hurry to complete things, to fulfill obligations, to submit things on time, to get things done before time, right? There's a time for everything. So people in modern society are always in a hurry to fulfill their responsibilities, the responsibilities that are brought on people due to modernism, right? Isn't that there's a rat race, right? So to buy a car, right? The materialism, to acquire things, to make money, to do a job, to find a once you graduate to find a good job. Then once you find a job to go for a promotion. Then once you retire, even to find another source of income. And then maybe your children to get married. Whatever it is, there's a rat race. So there's miles to go before you sleep, right? Lot of duties and responsibilities and commitments, obligations to fulfill before your dying day. So that is a subtle attack against modern man. Yes?
Man, can't we argue that is it because of the weariness of the journey or the weariness of life and miles to go before achieve
Sorry, I didn't get you.
and miles to go before I sleep is mentioned twice. Can't we take it as because of the weariness of his journey or the weariness of his life? Something like that can't we take?
Illness. The
Yeah.
journey is compared to the life, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. The journey of the speaker, the speaker is telling that I have miles to go before I sleep.
Go before I sleep, yes.
So what he's telling is he has a lot of distance to cover to go before arriving at his home, right? So there's a lot of
I,
I have to go before I reach home. At the same
it is the duty consciousness day. Duty consciousness day.
yes, the duty. Yes, that is also a possibility. That he is a duty conscious person, and all
Right.
that is symbolic of the life journey of the poet, or life journey of the people. That people have a lot of responsibilities to fulfill before
Before we
they
die.
die. Right? The sleep is
Thank you, ma'am.
symbolical of death. Right. So in a way, this person is a duty conscious person. That is why he says he has duties to do before he lays down to rest. So there is absolutely no time to sit by and admire nature.
And I just want to ask you, ma'am, then why the speaker wants to connect the nature and his personal attitudes? I mean, why do you want to give a connection between them? Now, he's in the first two stanza. He's talking about the nature. He is mesmerized by the beauty of
Yes.
nature. At the sudden, And the last three lines, he turning back to his own problems, his own things. So now, what is the connection between them? He's
Yes.
he's talking about that nature, and later he's talking about his personal things. So I don't see any connection between them. So how can you
No,
relate this?
the connection is now the person, he is on a journey, right? So all of a sudden he sees the snowy wood covered with snow, and he stops by to admire this beauty of the nature, right? But then as time passes by, he realizes he cannot stop here. Why? He has to hurry. Isn't that our experience also? If you are on a way to a lecture, or if you are on a way to the job or your things, right? You stop by something and you admire it. Say, imagine you see a beautiful flower garden or a flower tree filled with flowers. You stop and admire it. Then you remember that you have to hurry, and you hurry back. So
So
you was
what is the
yes,
message he's going to giving
he,
us?
the message he is giving is that there is no time for the modern human beings. Sorry, if you just forget the word modern, the idea is that there is no, at a very personal level, his idea is, his theme is, he doesn't have time to stop and admire nature because his life is very busy. So he doesn't have time to stop and admire or look at, enjoy the beauty of nature. That is the personal theme, right? But on a every poem has, that is his personal experience because he is very busy. He doesn't have time to stop and admire. That is the personal experience he's narrating, right? The theme is, if you apply it, human beings have a lot of roles and responsibilities and commitments that they don't have any time to stop and relax, to idle, to enjoy, right? To enjoy the communion with nature. So if you take it at a universal level, that is the idea. That people, when they grow up, when they are in their adult life, they don't have time to stop and enjoy things. They don't have time to reflect on things. They don't have the time to enjoy the beauty of nature. That is because their lives are full of responsibilities and obligations. So that is the conflict. That's why I said the theme of the poem is the conflict between the desire to enjoy nature and the responsibilities and commitments. There is a tension, there is a conflict between the two. On one end, you have, okay, one end, I decide to enjoy nature. The other end, um, okay, you have to go on, you have to hurry up, there's no time, you have to do it quickly, you can't stop here. There's this other voice. There are two voices always playing in our minds. Our heart says we have to, okay, see how beautiful it is. I can hear the wind, uh, the downy flake, the sound of snowflakes falling, how the darkest night of the year. So there's the desire of the heart to enjoy this. On the other hand, the voice of the mind, hurry up now, quickly, you have to go to another task. That is the conflict between these two, right? So that is the theme of the poem, is the conflict between these two things. Then, on a universal, if you contextualize this, you can say that this is a dilemma of modern human beings because they do not have the time to enjoy nature. The busyness of life is brought out by industrialization, by modernism, right? Busy schedules, deadlines, those things are brought on by modernism. In first time, there were no schedules and things like that, right? But those things are coming up in his time. So with modernism came the busy schedule of the human being, and that is the conflict. It shows the conflict of a modern day individual in a modern society. So that could also be another thing. You must not forget that Robert Frost was writing in the modern times, right? So all these things that we discuss are unique to modern individuals, don't you think? Do you think a person who was in a tribe will write this type of poem? No, no, they will not write about this. That is why when Chaucer wrote, he did not write this. Did he write about the conflict that human beings had about enjoying nature and the busyness of the day? No, Chaucer did not write that. Have you read Chaucer's poems? Chaucer said how bad it is to break the God's law and how what negative consequences would follow if you sin. So that was the theme in Chaucer's poems because he was writing at that time. Those times people were they did not have a conflict between nature and modern busy life. They were very mischievous and law breaking people. So Chaucer said it is not good to break the law. So that his theme was different. But in modern times, all these poems, Robert Frost's poems, Yeats' poems, all these are relevant to modern context. Is it clear, Aspa?
Yeah.
Excuse me, madam. Madam, what do the woods, in the first line, what do the woods indicate? Normally, woods never belong to anybody.
Forest,
Here,
no?
whose woods?
Whose
Forest.
goods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. Woods, they don't belong to anyone.
Now,
But
is it stopping by woods on us, every evening in this line, the poet has given us three elements of nature, no? Wood symbols for forest, snow for weather, evening for time.
yes, you can take it that way. But
Now,
for
woods
that,
here, the symbol of, forest, no?
you can take it in a broader context to mean nature. Right now, when for that previous question, woods don't usually belong to anyone, but according to what he's telling, whose woods these are, I think I know his house is in the village though. Can you give a different interpretation to it? There can be a wood which belongs to a person, like in the sense now wood is something less than a forest. So there now, if you look at Sri Lanka, every corner, every piece of land belongs either to the government or to a person, right? So if you think of a place like an estate, a rubber plantation, that could also be taken as a wood.
And his house in the village, but he did not mention the owner of the forest. I mean, owner of the woods.
Yes.
He thinks that whose forest is. I mean, the owner of the forest is disappear. No, maybe the owner is a person, maybe anyone, the god.
Yes. Yes. So the owner is not taken, right? But it seems that there is an owner. But because that is why he says he will not see me stopping here to watch his food fill up his mouth. He thinks that there must be an owner, but he will not stop his ideas. He will not stop. He will not see me if I stop to enjoy this a little. That is the idea, right? So the woods, I think the woods here, according to what the poem is saying, it can belong to someone. Maybe it's a piece of land, right?
Ma'am, the answer is also given in the third line. To watch his foods fill with snow.
Yes.
That means the trees are covered with snow. I mean, here we can take it as a tree, no? Woods mean trees.
Yes, obviously, yes. Trees are covered with snow. Yes, that is why I said maybe the trees.
It is an imagery, no?
Yes, it's imagery. Like it must be a kind of a plantation or a small glade of forest, right? Owner of a big area of land, maybe, right? See, once you don't go into far-fetched theories as well, right? So usually, broadly speaking, when you study the poetry, you study the poet first. If you go to Wikipedia, you will get a very sufficient biography of the poet, and it will tell you what his major concerns were. Like Yeats, right? You will, if you look at the biography of the poet, you can see what he was talking out of his own experience. So, usually when we talk of Frost, his usual themes would be the attack on industrialization and urbanization. That's first one, right? Then the dilemmas of modern man, such as this one, right? Stopping by goods on a snow weaving, the inability to enjoy nature, the tension between the desire to enjoy nature and the responsibilities and obligations that he has to fulfill. And then the third theme is man versus nature. Nature as something hostile to man. Those are the three main themes that appear in first poems. Right? So go by the broader themes. You can interpret a poem in many different ways because you all are readers. But when you're learning for an exam, try to be broad. Try to apply things broad because everything is set in the context. It could be not very good if you try to analyze each and every line of the poem and try to bring out its significance, right? Because the questions come relating to the poet. No, if you take John Donne's poem there, the question, the arguments in his poem. So when you talk about John Donne, there can be two or three themes. One of the themes is love, right? He explores it in a sort of a sexual union. That is the way John Donne portrays love, the sexual union. And then what else? When you talk about Donne, you have the other two aspects, the argumentative logical arguments and the metaphysical conceits, right? Logical argument, it relates to the intellectual content of this poem. So even whether you say logical arguments or intellectual content, it is the same. If I give you a question like this, John Donne is notable for the intellectual content of his poetry than the emotional aspect of it. Comment with suitable examples. So what are you going to say? You are going to take out two poems and comment on the intellectual aspect of it. For example, if you say, sweetest love I do not know. Here John Donne tries to convince his lover through an argument, through intellectual argument. Whereas another poet of the Elizabethan era might, for example, use soft language, soft tones to console his lover. Here, whereas a normal lover would console his beloved in softer tones, here John Donne is using logical arguments to console his lover. So you have to give examples from each stanza of the poem. Okay? So three things with regard to Donne. Those three things. There might be three or four, right? So in the similar way, when it comes to Robert Frost, those are the three main aspects that they will be discussed, right? The three themes, and then with regard to the technique, you will have to get this conversational language, colloquial language, and irony. And irony is not a very big theme, very big aspect of this poetry, right? But you can comment, you can say yes. The irony of life, human life itself, right? You see in the next poem. So the conversational colloquial language and strict verse form, right? Iambic tetrameter and rhyming patterns and auditory and visual images. Those are the main aspects of Robert Frost's poems. So you will get questions around those points only. So get ready for each of those points. Now I am not able to discuss that question with you because some of you have not sent some answers have been lost. Right, so we'll have to discuss that question next week. Right, so when you talk about first, keep those main themes in mind. Okay, now what is the previous question that you had? Woods. Symbol of woods. Woods would symbolize nature here. Can you think of any other thing that woods would symbolize? No, it's usually nature. You say anything that is symbolic, usually first symbols are not very complex. They are not complex like John Donne's conceits. So a mending wall would be a barrier. A wood would be nature. Right? Okay, the next one, fire and ice. It's a short poem. Here too first explores the possibility of two apocalyptic scenarios. What is an apocalypse? The end of the world, the apocalypse, right? So he suggests two ways how the world could end. One that it could end in fire, one that it could end in ice. So what easily you can see what does fire symbolize. Think of it literally, right? It can end in warfare. You can wage a war and you can end it. Then what does ice mean? Ice is associated with coldness, aloofness, right? Indifference. So either way, the world can end in those things also. So it seems like at this time, Frost had a dialogue with a astronomer, I think. Yeah. Some say that the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire, right? So which means fire is also something related to desire, right? Some say the world will end in fire, some say it will end in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, so I have had some taste of desire. Maybe the poet is telling, I have had desires, I have experienced desires, or I have seen the desires, the lust, the greed of other people. But from my experience, I say, I hold with those who favor fire. So maybe there are two indications here. Maybe he says, I prefer that the world will end in fire. Fire in the sense, desires, passion, anger, lust, right? Those things, violence, greed. Or maybe he is telling that he believes that the world will end in warfare like this. Warfare which is a result of passion, anger, right? Impulsiveness, violence. So maybe he thinks, okay, the world will end in this way. It will end in fire. But if it had to perish twice, right? If the world were to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate. That means I know enough of ice also. What does hate symbolize? Ice. Ice symbolize hatred. I know enough of ice. I know enough of hatred, the cold hatred. Why is hate associated with ice?
Fire is a desire, no?
Sorry?
Fire symbolizes desire.
Desire. Yes, fire symbolizes desire. Also, yes, fire symbolizes desire. Ice symbolizes hate. Right? So why? How can you associate ice with hate? Hatred is cold. Whereas desire is warm and hot. Passion, right? Desire, passion, lust, that is hot. Hatred is cold. Cold hatred. I think I know enough of hate to see that for destruction, I know enough of hatred to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Ice is also sufficient to destroy the world. That means hatred is also enough to destroy the world. So what could also be associated with hatred? Maybe hatred and also maybe indifference or coldness, no? You hate a person. You are indifferent towards him, insensitive. That is also enough to destroy humanity.
It is a human emotions, no?
Human?
Destructive future of human emotions.
Yes. Human emotions. That is, emotions are symbolized by the fire. So human emotions, the excess of emotions, uncontrollable emotions will destroy human society. But on the other hand, hatred also, not emotions, but hatred which is built up inside, that is also uh, sufficient for the world to end, for humanity to destroy itself. So that is a small, short, apocalyptic poem, and it is very prophetic that it was written shortly after the First World War. So perhaps it actually predicted maybe the Cold War. After the Second World War, we came to the Cold War. It also destroyed humanity in a way, right? How many people died as a result of it? The ideological hatred. You hate the other country not because of anything, not because of some injury, but ideologically divided, right? Our set of values, your set of values. So we hate you for your set of values. So that was the Cold War. So it also destroyed humanity. So this destruction, this hatred is also sufficient to destroy humanity. And the speaker seems to weigh up the two possibilities, which is better. I hold with those who favor fire. Maybe he prefers desire over indifference, or maybe he is predicting, or maybe he is thinking that the world will end in warfare. Right? The end of the world will happen because of warfare. Maybe he is thinking that way. Any questions here?
Here, desire is very, and he is comparing to the fire. That is very dangerous, and which grows more and more, no, like fire.
Yes, very true. Consuming, right? Just as the fire is spreading, desires are like they grow, right? They are consuming. They consume the individual and human society. Maybe it grows in an individual, like the fire. Now the fire burns up an individual and then it spreads to other areas also. So everything catches fire and the fire spreads. Like that, the desires swell in a person and they uh, consume the person and it spreads to whole society. So maybe that is symbolic of that, yes. Any other question? So the two symbols used here, fire and ice, are symbols to represent on the one hand emotions, passions, lust, violence, warfare, and ice symbolizing hatred, cold indifference, um, hatred which is very subtle but nonetheless has the ability or the capacity to kill. So that this ice symbolizes all those things, right? The indifference that is also capable of destruction. So Frost is critical of both. He is critical of the passions or the desires which kill, and he is also critical of the cold indifference of people. This coldness which comes out in the poem, out.
All these three poems, he is talking about his own experiences, you know.
Yes, he's talking of own experiences and reflections. Now, when it comes to fire and ice, it is a reflection, his own reflection. Then, stopping by woods and mending wall, his own experiences. Yes, they are very ordinary events, isn't it? So that is why I said he is capable of taking ordinary events and elevating them to a theme of universal significance. Elevates them to a universal significance. That is the ability of every poet, right? They take that. The talent of the poet is to make use of ordinary events and give them a universal significance. You can get a question on that also, right? Robert Frost is especially significant for that. He takes events, incidents from ordinary rural life and elevates them to a level of universal significance. So if I give that question to you, what are you going to write? Robert Frost takes ordinary, simple events from everyday rural life and elevates them to a universal significance. Can you comment? Comment using two of Robert Frost's poems. So you can take out Mending Wall. The simple event is the first part, the simple event is the event of mending the wall. So how does it become a universal significance? It symbolizes how human beings build barriers in society, right? The division, how first criticizes the division and separatism there. And then stopping by woods.
Can we take it as a individualism versus nature?
Individualism versus uh, individualism versus collectivism, isn't it? The opposite of individualism. Sorry, I have. Oh my goodness, 49413. Can you hear now? If you can't, just put up. I didn't see the chat box. Only now I saw it. Right? Individualism versus collectivism. The two opposites are collectivism and individualism.
Collectivism.
Yes. So you can say man versus nature, individualism versus collectivism. I'm not sure of that word. Collective nature or communalism, communal nature. Societies living in people living individually versus people living in communities. Communalism.
Socialism.
Yes, those words like socialism, communalism, they are
socialism.
We can't say because socialism is a political term now. Right? So use the word communalism and collectivism. That is how it is said. Capitalism is more associated with individualism. Communalism more associated with socialism. That's how the polars go. So you can take the other one, stopping by woods. The ordinary event of a person who is on a journey and suddenly stops to admire the wood and how he reflects. So that dilemma is made universal. The human desire to enjoy nature and the human desire to, the human need, the necessity to go on with life with it, right? Then, so all these things are very well brought out in the poem Out by Robert Frost. Did you read the poem Out?
Yeah, little.
Yes. Others? What about the others? Did you read the poem? Let's say if you have read the poem, you will see all those things brought out in Robert Frost's poem Out. The bus stop.
It is about the boy, no, who cut woods with this knifing source.
Yes, in a song, right? An ordinary event which happened in a mill. Sorry, what you call in a yes, what you call it? Not exactly a mill, right? So he was cutting wood with a saw, slow length sticks of wood, right? The wood necessity to light a stove, to light a fire. Slow length sticks of wood. The bassa snarled and rattled in the yard, right? So snarled and rattled, onomatopoeia there, right? The saw, an instrument of industrialization, like it's a instrument which is used to cut. So here, boy handling this kind of big weapon, right? That is the subtle irony here, how he criticizes. The criticism is so subtle that you cannot feel it, but it is there, right? In all of Frost's poems, Frost is not a vehement critic like Blake or even Shelley, right? But his criticism is full of irony and very subtle. So the busts are snarled and rattled in the yard, and made dust and rubbed stolen sticks of wood. Sweet scented stuff when the breeze blew across it. And from there, those that lifted eyes could count 5 mountain ranges, one behind the other, under the sunset, far into Vermont. Right? So he creates the beautiful picture of the rural scene. There is this place where the boy is working in a shed, and he's sawing wood for the fireplaces, and the wood is there is sawdust, and when the breeze blows across it, it's very sweet. So we also have sweet uh, memories of these things, isn't it? Even if you see a train that is puffing up smoke and going across a rural countryside, you will say, "Oh my goodness, what a nice scene! There is this train that is going." But it is a symbol of the industrial revolution. But we are so very delighted to see this train sometimes. But here, the saw the sweet scented stuff, right? So Robert Frost is ironical because although the scene is very beautiful and calm, everything seems to be calm. There is a impending gloom to take place, right? So there isn't any hint of destruction. There isn't any hint of an accident or any tragedy which is going to happen. The poet doesn't give us any hint about it, and not a clue even. But that is where the irony is, right? There is no hint or clue of the tragedy, but it will soon take place. So you can see from this place, if you lift your eyes, you can see the 5 mountain ranges. Under the sunset, you can count these 5 mountain ranges far into Vermont. The mountain ranges go straight into Vermont itself. And the saw snarled and rattled, as if trying light or had to bear a load. Right, so that whether it is cutting light or whether it is it has to be given pressure, right? If it's cutting a heavy log, after it is snarled and rattled.
The repetition represents the source repetitive motions and
Yes, it is repetitive motion of the saw is symbolic of the repetition of routine work. This boy is doing routine work. What is the significance of routine work? When you do routine work, you get bored. So maybe that is why this boy cut his hand, because he's doing it soon, right?
Heavy load. He was loaded with heavy work.
Yeah, yes, that can also be taken, right? So he was bored, right? So a small boy or a big boy doing a man's job. This is something that has to be performed by a man who has experience and who is skilled enough to do this work. Because when you do repetitive work, you get bored and you are prone to accidents. So why are children employed to engage in this type of work? Routine job, it is very monotonous, even to be executed by a boy. So that is where the tragedy is, right? Frost is critical of that. And yes, and nothing happened. They was all but done, right? Okay. So it's almost 4:30. Are you able to go till? Now we have to do out. Then there are 2 more poems. A minor bird, a note not taken, and the telephone. 3 more poems. Are you able to go on till we finish all the poems, or shall we stop for now?
Madam, shall we stop now?
Yes. Is that Isuranka?
Yeah, madam.
Yes. Others? Others, what do you say? Let's listen to the message. Asfar can go on till 5 easy.
If others are okay, that doesn't matter,
Yes,
madam. But
Yes.
I'm
I'm
unable.
with the majority.
Sorry, you have to make the key.
I'm with the majority of our.
You're with the majority. That's very funny. It's like the unknown citizen. Anyway.
If the others are okay, ma'am, that doesn't matter. But I have to leave.
Okay. Yes, I think we'll also stop. I
Shall
also
we,
think.
shall we stop, ma'am?
Yes, we'll stop. Because we can then continue with the themes of the other poems. So we will continue and then are we meeting on Sunday? I think you all have lectures, isn't it? Yes, on Sundays you had said that you have lectures.
Yeah.
Sunday we have classes. I think psychology. We have psychology
Psychology and linguistics.
and linguistics.
Okay. Right. So then we will again continue from this point on Saturday. We will sort out the problem with the assignment so that we can discuss the assessment question, right? And I will give you some guidelines on how to write answers there.
And I just want to request you, madam, can you please give me some questions to study?
Yes, I'm going to do that. We will draft up some. You need to draft up some.
Not as
questions.
assignment, get to study.
Study, yes. We have to take some questions and write the relevant quotations and the points for those answers. For example, taking the major themes of each poem.
Yeah.
If we talk, say, Robert Frost, what are the themes and the relevant quotations for those? So I will tell you of a method of how to do that. Right? You need a CR book. Like it's a practical way, right? I don't know. You are working for 44 semesters, isn't it? So last week, when we were doing our B.Ed programs, we had to study around some poems like this, and then we had in one semester we had more than 36 dramas and novels. So that is not easy. So everything has to be properly organized. It depends on how you organize your work. You cannot think that later on you are going to do it. And I went through some of the answers, but they were not good, right? So for every question, you have to have the points and the relevant quotations. That way you can have the answer. Because once you get the question, you can't start thinking the exam with what to write. You have to have the answer at your fingertips. So I will discuss all that next week. Okay? Right. Shall we wind up the lecture for now then?
Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam.
See you next Saturday.